How do I know if God is blessing me and preparing me for a new season? So you guys are in this really crucial season of life, and it says in Ecclesiastes 3, there's a time and a season for everything. And the key is to figure out, okay, what season was I in? What did I learn? What was good? What was bad? What would I do different? What life lessons do I take? And then realizing you're into a new season. What are the new habits, the new principles, the new things that God has for me? And so when you go from high school to college, season change. You're living with your parents till you move out, season change. Your parents are covering your financial responsibilities, now you're on your own, season change. You graduate from college and now you got to find a job, and now you got to pay off your college debt, season change. You meet somebody, you think, I think they're interesting, they think I'm interesting, this may have a future, season change. You get engaged, you get married. Life is all about transitioning from one season to another. And immaturity is where in the new season, we're still acting like we did in the old season. And so, like, for example, it's not a sin for a child to act childish. That's what kids do. I was at a store recently, and there was like a 2-year-old kid throwing a fit, and the mom looked at the kid and literally said, "You're so childish." And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, they're 2. Like, that's, they're not doing trigonometry and laundry. Like, they're 2. They're immature. But if at 22, that same little boy was throwing a fit at the grocery store, it would be a problem because he's supposed to transition. And the problem in our culture is we allow people to transition into new life stages and seasons, but we don't prepare them for maturity in those seasons. So this is why you move out of your parents' house and you get into a lot of debt. Or you're in college and you drink yourself, out of a grade point average. Or you get into a relationship and you're living and sleeping together, but you're not mature enough for marriage. And so you guys are in a very difficult season in world history where you have a lot more freedom than maturity sometimes would qualify for. Right now people will give you a credit card even if you don't have a job. They're going to give you a lot of freedom, but you're not prepared for it. You can have sex, but you're not married. The world we live in, it's pushing everybody toward freedom, but not toward preparing for those freedoms. And the result is, quite frankly, for you guys, it leads to a lot of brokenness in your generation. A lot of people have had financial trauma. They've got themselves into real problems. Sometimes they've had addiction, sex, drugs, alcohol. Sometimes they've had a lot of just brokenness in their life, just a lot of sexual, emotional brokenheartedness, a lot of being betrayed or taken advantage of, addiction, sexual assault, all of those kinds of things. And so the key to get ready for the next season is to learn everything you can, heal up. Some of you probably got some things to heal from. Your parents were divorced, your family blew up, something happened, maybe the person that you love betrayed you, things like that are very damaging emotionally, and it's how to heal up from that, and then how to make that pivot into the next season where you're ready for the freedoms that are coming. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody gets a lot of freedom that they're not prepared for, and they get themselves into really serious trouble very, very quickly. I don't know what you'd add to that. I don't know if I answered the question, but I talked for a while.
How do I know if God is blessing me? I think that we know when we're walking in God's will because there's a peace about it. Even if there's chaos around us, there's a peace about whether or not we're walking in God's will. And so I think how we know is constantly being in his word, constantly being in prayer and communication with the Lord, having, like we talked about, wise counsel around us that we trust that they're godly and they can help coach us up. And if they see us doing something that may not be aligned with God's will, just being able to have that conversation and say, hey, can we course correct here and see if this is what God wants instead of this? I think we don't always understand God's blessing versus trials and all that, but there's a lot of blessing that comes through walking through trials. I mean, James talks about facing trials of many kinds in our life. They're just going to be all over. It doesn't mean God isn't blessing us. It means that he's preparing us for the next season, oftentimes in that trial. And as we endure through it, then we'll have that hope for the next season, and we'll be prepared for what's coming next. And I think a lot of times we look for blessing in a way that maybe God is not necessarily giving you something that feels like a blessing, but he's allowing things in your life so that you can walk in his blessing of wisdom and preparation for the next season. So I don't know if that answers it any differently, but yeah, I think that that we're always looking for blessing, but we need to be looking for God's voice to prepare us for the next season and figure out how to walk in the next season.
Yeah, and sometimes God's blessing is external. Maybe it's a job. Maybe, family members generous and they help you with college or a car or whatever, their generosity might be. A lot of times God's blessing is internal. Something was broken and God healed it. Something was really, you were bitter, you were angry, you were hurt, and forgiveness came and you kind of got unburdened for that. Sometimes it's just growth in character. I'm not where I was. I'm not who I was. I'm seeing progress. I'm encouraged by where I'm at and where I'm going. And a lot of the times, at least in our world, once the external is in place, then you're encouraged to move into the next life stage. So once you make enough money or once you're in a financial position, you can get married or whatever. It's also important to say that to enter into the next life stage or the next season, it's a lot of the internal stuff. Are you growing? Are you maturing? Are you learning? Is your character forming? If so, that's a lot of blessing as well. And so, I just would encourage you guys. Sometimes we think of blessing, we think of stuff, and sometimes it's character is really the biggest blessing of all. And so God may be blessing you by growing you in character and healing you in some things, and that may be preparing you for the next season, what he has for you, whatever that might be for you.